Here, is this thing on? Right, so I may have moved house in the last year, and now I have no workshop, no craft room, no space to make anything. But we're going to start to remedy that, and so we're going to sand this oak table I found in a shop. I'll remove all the varnish, and then we're going to do a cool thing on it, in it, with some copper wire I acquired during the long periods of waiting for solicitor paperwork. So we're going to route a groove in it, and then we're going to ebonize the table. So we did all the routing, and we're now going to ebonize the table. So to ebonize it, you put wire wool in vinegar, except this one didn't actually dissolve the steel wool. This is like a 5% vinegar, and it just didn't do anything. And it's been in here for like a week, and it's supposed to change colour. A lot of the ones on YouTube I've seen are black. I haven't got a black one, but it didn't work anyway. But I did boil one of these till it was half the volume and put it in a jar, and this was full of steel wool, and it has dissolved that entirely, only leaving a very slight powder at the bottom, and that's all that's left of like this much steel wool. So, and I've done a little test piece. I know that this turns the oak a darker colour, so we're going to do that. Right, so this is the beginning of like a bigger project of like the craft room, and this is going to be like my main workbench, but also like a filming area so that I can face the camera rather than having the camera over my shoulder the whole time. So we're going to go with like this black and copper theme. So this table's going to go in the middle of the room, and then there's going to be a workstation behind it, which is hopefully going to have my computer and all the bits of equipment that I also use inside in a relatively clean environment. This whole process of painting the top of the table with the vinegar, with iron in it, took about maybe 3 to 4 minutes. It's quite quick, and you can see the reaction happening as I paint round, and it's kind of catching me up as I go. Now I'm going to do all these bits down here, but there's no point making you watch me film the thing. Alright, so we're going to use this stuff. It's got a dye in it, help it make it even darker. It's looking a little pale at the minute, although I suspect a clear oil would still leave it dark. I do actually want it to be really, really dark. So we're going to do a test. We're going to go down this leg and see. And the reason we're doing it on the leg is it's a little test out of the way, where if I have to, I can sand, and it won't matter too much. That looks awesome. I don't know if you can tell, because it's quite poor light in here. But it's gone really dark. Looks really good. So I'm going to do the rest of it. Doing this first coat of oil was the definition of satisfaction. Just putting it on and watching the oak go all this, like from this kind of pale purpley colour, where the iron and vinegar had mixed in with it, to the like pure black that you kind of wanted for the tabletop. It was great. Right, so what I said while filming this didn't make any sense at all, but I'm going to strip these 3 cables with a little 3D printed stripper I made, and then we're going to twist them individually up, and then we're going to twist the 3 twisted ropes together, and that will make like a 3-stranded rope that you would see on like a boat or something like that. So because these cables are 5 meters long, I think it was the longest one I did, I made a little holder for an X-Acto blade so that I could just pull the wire over the blade without risking my fingers, and then that put a line down the cable that I could pull the wire out of relatively easily. I needed about 20 meters of 3-stranded rope for this project, which means you actually have to strip 60 meters of cable, and to just sit on a desk and run the knife along 60 meters would have taken forever, and I'd have got incredibly bored. And now we're winding it with the drill, and we just put the wires in a vise and the other end in the chuck of the drill and twist away until it all looks fairly even.
One thing I did notice though when I went too far is little strands of copper would start poking out. You can see the glints on the coils. But it didn't matter too much because when I was hammering it in, they all went away.
In theory, because we've triple twisted these, we could splice them, but it's normally a lot of hard work, even with normal rope, let alone with something like this.
So there was about 3 or 4 hours of hammering this cable into the table. It's kind of my own fault really. I could have made the slot slightly bigger and it was placed in. Or I wanted it really tight so that when I pour resin over it to make the table flat and smooth again, it doesn't float out, or I don't have to touch it in any way, so the cable's properly clamped in just by the wood of the table.
Okay, so after a bit of sanding, this is all nice and flush on the table. You can't feel this at all hardly. I went through the black in a few places, so whoever said online that you can't get rid of this stuff once it's on, you can, if you're willing to do enough sanding. But I've retouched it up with vinegar. You can see over there it was quite bad, so I had to put quite a lot on, and the vinegar's turned brown now for some reason. Who knows? So I'm going to give this a quick wipe off with the blue rag, and then we're going to oil it, and hopefully it all looks the same with no staining or watermarks or vinegar marks or anything. But then after that, in theory, it's done.
So one way of alleviating all of this repair work is to dye the table black after you've put the copper in and all the resin. Maybe with the exception of putting a little bit in the grooves to make sure the grooves are black.
You can see where I've had the vinegar on it and where I've sanded. And hopefully it looks the same once I oil it again.
At this point, I can't state how much I think Danish oil is underrated. You hardly ever see it in YouTube videos. I don't know if it's hard to get in America or whatever, but you hardly ever see it. And it just made everything pop and was really iridescent. It was really cool. It's really tough as well. You can drop curry on this stuff and it doesn't stain. It's why the main reason I use it is it doesn't matter. You can make a mess on it. It's fine. There's nothing damages it as far as I found out. So definitely a thing you should have in your woodworking finishing supplies.
Wipe the excess off. So I'll probably end up sanding and oiling this a couple of times, but I mean, you've seen the most dramatic ones.
And with that, this table's done. There's not going to be much of a schedule for a little while until I figure out what's going on. But for the next wee while, there's going to be lots of how to manage your studio, craft room, workshop videos as I slowly build and get mine back together so I can actually start making things again for people. And on that note, I will hopefully see you all again sooner than the last time. Bye!